Okay, everybody, thanks for listening today. We're really fortunate today to have an opportunity to talk to Daniel Holzman. You may have already know Daniel's name. He's co-owner at the Meatball Shop, and gosh, these guys started just about 5 years ago, and they have 6 locations. They're growing. They're extremely popular, well-liked, successful restaurants in New York City, and been featured on a lot of all kinds of television. So they've done a great job with just really getting their word out and their brand. And Daniel, man, thanks so much for taking the time today to talk to us and share some advice and wisdom.
I had to wake up an extra 30 minutes early this morning. This is like a milestone Monday.
Dude, I bet you have long days, man. So I'm excited to chat with you because I want to hear kind of where you all are now. We were up there filming a couple of years ago, and you've opened some more locations since then. I suspect there's more on the horizon. So kind of what are y'all focused on right now?
Right now we're spending most of our 80% of our time focused on operations, and I think that as we grew, we kind of lost sight of the quality of the individual restaurants, the happiness of the managers, and the core kind of important goal of serving the food, delicious food quickly in a fun place and not taking ourselves too seriously. So the last 6 months, we've just stopped everything and said, hey, we need to really make sure everything is great, because we can't grow if we're not happy with who we are.
That's an interesting commentary about that, Daniel, and it's an interesting balance, I would think. It's probably always something you have to check and make sure you get that right balance. And I remember you told me 2 years ago, which I thought was one of the more memorable comments anybody made to me doing those videos for a couple of years. You said, grow half as fast as you think you can. And I guess that's something that you always probably have to fight, because you want to keep growing, but your point around that, I think, was really that, if you grow faster or fast as you think you can, you're going to lose sight of those core elements along the way. Is that right?
I think so. I can't speak to everybody, because there are people that are extraordinary operators that are able to grow very quickly without losing anything, and, their companies are profiting all the more because of their expedited, or accelerated growth. In our case, the Meatball Shop is a labor of love, and it has, it's always been a challenge for us operationally, because that's not where we come from. We never worked in chain restaurants. It was always, one restaurant where we were the chef or the bartender. So there's a lot of learning that goes into figuring out how to consistently deliver, meatballs across 6 different restaurants, let alone more. Yeah,
but you're learning it. You guys are figuring it out, and getting better at it, I'm sure, all the time. And some of those folks that may have done that before, and they've had experience
on somebody else's dime, maybe.
Or on somebody else, right? Yeah. So you guys, is this all you funded all of this yourselves?
We have, obviously, in the beginning, we begged, borrowed, and stole some. Well, minus the stealing part, hopefully. We begged and borrowed from anybody that would give us cash to open the first restaurant, and we've had investors along the way in individual restaurants. At this point, we've been trying to, run it and grow organically from, the funding that we from the cash that the restaurants are supposed to be producing.
Do you not to look back and you always want to kind of look forward, but if you were to, in terms of like somebody listening to this, if you were to look back at what y'all have done over the last 5 years, right? You opened in 2010, is that right?
Yeah, 2010.
Okay, so 5 years, and you've got 6. What would you do differently, knowing what you know now? Or is there anything you would do differently, or can you just say,
Yeah, I would have spent more time documenting. I would have spent more time with one. I would have done a lot of things differently, first and foremost. I would have spent more time paying attention to what made the first restaurant special so that we could really, make sure that we were training the folks that were going to run the future restaurants on that. I would have spent more time training people and being much more selective about the hiring process. It's really hard to imagine when you're down a cook that you're better off not hiring the first person that walks through the door. But it's 3 years later when that cook is still there and you realize that they have a limited potential, arguably because they were poorly chosen in the first place. You realize you kind of shot yourself in the foot. So I think that's important.
Yeah. It's you have to you have to think long term, not just solving an immediate need. Well, do you tell me a little bit about. I mean, y'all have been as good or better really than anybody I've ever seen at getting exposure. You've been on the Tonight Show. You've been on. You've been on everything. Like I've seen y'all. And how are y'all able to manage that? I know you obviously have a good PR firm, but is that something that you think has been one of the cornerstones of why you've had so much success?
I think that the press. It's interesting. We came out with a our story, which is just our story. For whatever reason, people got behind and got excited about. A couple of young guys who wanted to, were best friends and wanted to live their dream. I guess people were excited about that. And the meatball thing, people decided, it was easy to publicize. So our publicists have done a really amazing job of getting us tons of press, and people have continued to support it, which is incredible. It's a question about at what point, enough is enough, or what, like having your face on TV might get a customer to come in for the first time. But in the restaurant business, you're only as good as your last meal. So, we might get that person to walk in the door, but getting them to come back is up to us. And, you're not going to sustain a business with only first-time customers. So I think the press is amazing, but not if you're losing sight of maintaining great operations, right? So that's been our last, now as in the beginning it was, we'll say yes to anything. Whatever it is, that's amazing. You want to support the Meatball Shop, no matter how big or small, we'd love to be part of it. Now we're trying to be a little bit more selective because, if we said yes to everything, it might take more time than we can afford.
Yes. Well, good that y'all have really figured that out. That was kind of my next question, was how do you find that, that balance? Because even in a city like New York, you can't survive on first-time customers. So you really, it sounds like y'all are kind of re-energized around making sure that the person that comes in has a great experience, so they come in again and again and again.
It's also a double-edged sword because, when you're just some place that no one's ever heard of and they come in to get a meatball hero and they're pleasantly surprised because you over-delivered and under-promised. It's another story when they, saw you on TV and heard, this is the best meatball, whatever in the world, blah, blah, blah. And, their expectations are set a little higher, and you're, setting yourself up, arguably, to disappoint.
Do you guys think about, one thing I always am curious about when the story is a part of the experience, right, for the customer, which yours is, and you do have a very authentic story. I know a lot of people have tried to, copy what y'all done or mimic it, and it doesn't work when it's not authentic. So you've got that for sure. There's no doubt about it. It's very clear, I think, to anybody that knows your story, that it's a fun story. It's an interesting story. You guys are, it all works. Now, here's my question. I always wonder this with places like that, is as you grow, how do you, so it's one thing when you're there, you're in the place, and so you've got this, two buddies from childhood, they started this place, and you're there a lot, but then as you grow, you're there, obviously less and less, you got six. So how do you maintain that sort of the authenticity around the story and what you all are trying to do when, you know, you have 6 and then 10 one day and maybe 20 away. Where do you see what I'm saying? Like, or does that not matter as much as you grow?
No, I think it matters a lot, and I think, you know, I can try and answer it. I think with 6 restaurants, you know, we're really just learning as we go. So, you know, to speak with any authority to, you know, some long-term ability to do that would be disingenuous, right? I think there are plenty of restaurateurs that have, you know, been in business for 20 or 30 years and could do a better job of explaining how to do it. I can only imagine, you know, only say what our strategy is and what we're trying, which is to empower people to take that leadership role, so that when a person comes into the restaurant, you know, maybe originally they were looking to Michael and Daniel as the, you know, the chef and the front of the house guy, and look, it's those 2 best friends. And now when you walk into the restaurant, hopefully the general manager and the, you know, managers below them are filling that role and creating that sense of community. And in a lot of restaurants, they have done that very well, you know, and they know the locals in the neighborhood. And you know, one of my most exciting, you know, experiences is going into a restaurant and having a customer not recognize me, but know the staff in the individual restaurant and see that family living on its own. We realized pretty early on that you can't have, you know, that the restaurants, originally we thought we'll be one big happy family. And then what we realized is, no, we're not going to be one giant nuclear-like family. We're going to be, each restaurant is going to be a distant cousin or you know, a nephew, but the individual restaurant will have their own kind of, you know, first family.
Yeah, that's a neat way to look at it. And you guys are, I mean, you do, you know, from the outside it seems like you're doing, like, it seems genuine to me, because you've got, like, for instance, on your website, you have your managers, you know, right there with a profile, a feature of the managers of each location and the general manager and so on. Like, that probably is a, you know, I would think that's a big deal. I mean, a lot of places they don't do that. And so that shows me that there's, you know, these people are bought in. They're, you know, they plan to be around for a while. I know there's always turnover, but I think that's really cool that you're doing that.
I went to the Mamafuku website 4 years ago when we were designing our second website, and they had all the managers and all the staff of all their restaurants on the website, and I thought, this is so cool. You know, you could really tell that they care about the folks that are working at their restaurant, and they want them to have ownership over it, which is very special. So we were hoping to mimic that, and I think the little things are important to people. It's kind of weird, but the little benefits almost outweigh some of the bigger issues. You know, like if we have like candy bars for people to eat at the office, they're more excited about that than getting a raise on their paycheck. You know, obviously, if you give someone $1,000, they can afford more candy bars than their dentist can keep up with. But for whatever reason, $1,000 doesn't make the same impact.
Yeah, it really is. It's an interesting balance, and it isn't always the money. Do you ever get a chance to read? I know you're so busy. Do you ever have time?
I definitely got a chance to read, yes.
So there's a book that I would recommend, man. You guys might really enjoy it. It's called Drive. Have you ever heard of it? By
No.
Daniel Pink. So it's awesome. I mean, it's a great book. In fact, I've got it sitting right here in front of me. It's called The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us is the subtitle. So Drive is the title. And he talks about, you know, what really motivates people. And it's not, I'll send you a link to it, but it's you know, you have to be compensated properly. And there's a point, you know, where hey, I need to make this amount. But then it becomes much different than being about money. And there are all these little things that can make a huge, huge impact that, you know, are not expensive, but go a long way. And like, I mean, for example, putting the people on your website, like that's clearly a big deal to them, I'm sure, and it makes them feel. So there's a lot of stuff. You may enjoy that book sometime.
I just put it on my Kindle. It'll be next in queue.
Oh, good, man. Well, I can't wait to hear what you think about it. I loved it. I think it's great. I've read it a couple of times, and it's a good one to kind of refer back to when you're thinking through those types of things. So, who are some of the folks that you kind of admire that you've learned from over the years?
Who are some of the folks that I admire?
Yeah, or people that you've learned from in your business, or even outside of your business. But
I don't know. I admire. I have a really wide pool of folks that I kind of look at and think, wow, they're doing something great. From the individual. For one thing, I admire a lot of these individual restaurateurs that have one restaurant and maintain this incredible quality and stick with it, and really feel like they're living their dream despite the fact that maybe they're not profiting as much as they could if they open multiple stores, or caught on to some of the ideas that a lot of people are following now. And then at the same time, you admire the guys that have really gone out and done it in management, because you realize how hard it is to have more than one restaurant and maintain the quality. So I think from top to bottom, it seems like anybody that's really successful has something special to share.
Sure, absolutely. Let me ask you this: what are some of the things that as a leader in your business, and just are there certain things that are important that you want your team to learn from you?
I think that in the last 7 or 8 months, we've really upgraded the team at the support company, the management company, and it's been a really amazing progress for us to see what people that know what they're doing and have the experience to, kind of like shepherd you through some of the difficult times you wouldn't otherwise be able to anticipate can offer. So I hope that, everybody on the teams below are recognizing that and doing a better job of hiring, great people, even if it's, sometimes a little intimidating.
Yeah. Gotcha. Or do you think that getting back to, so you've got your locations now and you're trying to find the right balance of you have to give people autonomy, I guess, to a degree, but then I guess you all are just kind of still learning this. It just seems to me there's always this dilemma of how much autonomy do you give where people could feel like they have ownership.
It's a real balance thing. How much, on some level you want someone to feel ownership and you want to give them autonomy. On the other side of it is, you certainly need to have a consistent, quality and product. So what we found is, if you give people if you really teach people what the reasoning behind your choices is, and you set them up with a set of values that they can filter their decision-making process through, you can allow them to be more entrepreneurial in their decision-making, because that they're making a decision from from your perspective, or filtered through your what's important to you. So we have a kind of a core list of important questions that we would ask ourselves before we make a decision in either direction. And that seems to be helping a lot with that.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so when they face an important dilemma, instead of they're going with their gut and just winging it and maybe or maybe not making a decision, or B, contacting you have them, they have a process they can apply to the decision.
Generally speaking, I'm a somewhat creative entrepreneurial character who enjoys my freedom, and I want to be able to make my own decisions. And I know the thing that the thing that stifles my creativity most is having to gain approval from somebody. That idea of this red tape, middle management, corporate approval system where your idiot boss is telling you, no, you can't do this thing that is great. That's like the death of creativity and spontaneity. So ideally we can manage through it without that. At the same time, it comes back to, well, that means it's that much more important to hire really great people that you can trust to make those decisions. And the better you do in that, and then the better you train them, the better able you are to allow them to manage their own, jobs.
Do you look then, like, is your finding folks to run your locations? Do you look for people that have some of that same creative entrepreneurial spirit as you do? There's kind of like because some people, they don't want the autonomy. They want, here's the answer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's chiefs and there's Indians. So do you kind of find chiefs that, where they're willing to take a lot of autonomy, but also not, kind of be rogue, but follow, a general set of, guidelines or guiding principles? Is that the kind of folks that you are trying to find? Would that make sense?
Yeah, I think that different positions, require different personalities. So one thing we're beginning to try is to define, who does well in different roles, because obviously the restaurant has many different positions. So we need a variety of personalities. At the same time, recognizing that the Meatball Shop or any business isn't, you can't be the right place for everybody. So trying to find the type of people that work well together and enjoy spending their time together. Because if you're going to, have a great team, ideally they want to work together. So I don't know if we're just trying to find people that have one trait or another. Specifically, I think it's more a matter of looking for those defining characteristics that mean that they're going to work well together, like, genuinely good people that actually enjoy working, people that are willing to go above and beyond, but recognize that if they want to themselves, they'll make themselves and everybody else unhappy. So I guess a level of intelligence and confidence to look you in the eye and give you a smile and shake your hand.
Yeah, right. Gotcha. The interesting thing, you mentioned something early on about reminding yourselves not to take yourselves too seriously, which I'm sure can be hard. I mean, you've got a big business, and you guys do a lot of volume, and you're in New York, and so there's like all these things that would kind of wedge you into having to be very serious about the business. But I know you're serious about it. But when you say taking yourselves, reminding yourselves not to take yourselves too seriously, what do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that? I mean, just because any individual is in any given position, there are a lot of factors that have gone into the reasoning for that. And, like I'm a terrible dancer. I don't have a particularly great voice. My spelling is really atrocious. So, just on like 80% of the, if you were to test me, on, like whatever, across all platforms, you'd realize that, probably I'm only better than a few people in a few areas, but I'm supposed to be the boss. And I think everybody needs to remind themselves of that, like, and not be a complete douchebag.
Gotcha, man. Here's actually something I just found that's interesting, because I'm curious about the story around this. I saw on your website this thing with Uber and the L train. So I don't know what's happening with the L train right now. Is it hard for people to get to your Williamsburg location?
So our Brooklyn location is just on the east side of the East River, in first stop into Brooklyn on the L train. It's really convenient because the L train runs across 14th Street in Lower Manhattan. It's one of the main thoroughfares, and it's literally 5 minutes from Union Square to the Brooklyn location. I live right by there, and it's great. However, they're doing construction nights and weekends, and the L train is not running for the next 5 weeks. So our marketing director teamed up with Uber, because Uber decided to offer $5 rides across the, anywhere on the L train line, flat fee. And so our marketing director, Natasha, who kind of saw this as an opportunity, said, well, let's give people free ice cream sandwiches if they take an Uber over to the Meatball Shop, and see if we can't, co-promote. So it's been going very well, although we've given away a lot of ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah, but probably a lot of great experiences that people will want to return when the L train is working. So that's
either that, or the other idea that people that are stuck in Brooklyn and can't leave, have limited choices, right? Like all of Manhattan has been cut off to them.
Absolutely. Well, that's so cool. So, I mean, you know, I like that, you know, your marketing director figured out a really creative way to deal with something versus you guys kind of throwing your hands up and going, you know, well, what can we do? Well, you actually can do something if you put on, you know, if you're creative and thoughtful and don't accept that, you know, exterior forces can, you know, always dictate.
One thing we've recognized when you're doing business with multiple locations in New York specifically, and I can't speak to the rest of the country or anywhere else, but like there's something going wrong and something out of the ordinary is the ordinary here. There's always some weather event or some train that's down or some explosion or construction or, you know, delay. So, you know, that is the norm.
Yeah, you guys have so much in regulatory stuff and everything else you have to deal with there. But you know what? It makes you, I guess it's so true though, right? Like if you can make it there, I mean, you when you guys kind of figure out the formula, if you do grow outside of that sort of natural footprint, then you may find in some ways that you know it's
yeah. Hopefully, some of the pressure won't be there. I hope that as we, you know, when we do find our way out of New York, we'll realize, well, you know, we've been prepared by the harshest trials.
Absolutely. Well, hey, listen, man, I'm gonna let you go because I know how busy you are. But this has been really awesome. And folks, if you're ever in New York, just go find a Meatball Shop. They're easy to find. You know, there's 6 of them, and go because I've been. They're fun. The food is fantastic. The staff is a lot of fun and